Florida Governor Ron DeSantis recently denied reports that his campaign was effectively in a free fall. And in fact, he's so adamant that his campaign is not in a free fall that his campaign has actually decided to completely reboot itself and start over from scratch. That's how awesome things are going, so incredibly awesome that we're going to stop doing everything that we are doing and we're going to do everything totally different. You know, because things were going just too good, I guess, right, Ron? That's how you want to phrase that. But anyway, DeSantis's campaign has basically said, we're rebooting, we're changing strategy, we're changing our messaging. He's no longer going to be running as Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida. He is now going to be Ron DeSantis, the insurgent candidate for president of the United States. They're going to try to not talk about Florida as much. They, just kind of want people to ignore what's happening down here. And I'm sure that has nothing to do with the recent decision by our Republican-controlled Department of Education that says that you have to teach that slaves actually learned some pretty cool things that they could use, quote, later in life. Like, later in life. Do they think legitimately that slaves were allowed to retire and then go start their own businesses? That's not a thing. But anyway, DeSantis doesn't want people talking about Florida anymore. Maybe it's because of the new educational decree. Maybe it's because all of those so-called accomplishments that he loves to brag about have all been overturned by the court system. And so he doesn't actually even have any accomplishments. Maybe he doesn't want people to talk about Florida because he doesn't want to talk about the fact that off the coast of South Florida, we've got ocean temperatures that are in the hundreds. We have home insurance companies fleeing the state, no longer providing us coverage. We have the fastest rising home prices of anywhere in the country. Per capita, we had more COVID deaths than anyone else. I could go on and on. Our economy is struggling. We have a 9% inflation rate while the rest of the country has a 3% inflation rate. Should I continue, Ron, or do people get the picture of why you don't want to talk about Florida anymore? Because you have created a hellhole down here, and it's finally getting the national attention that it deserves, so now your campaign's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Let's not talk about Florida. I mean, this race isn't about Florida. We got other states out there that Ron could eventually get to and destroy, so let's focus on those for now. They're going to keep Ron DeSantis out of crowds. Instead, they're going to have more personal type meetings, at churches and maybe at diners where he can shake people's hands, but he doesn't have to get up on the stage and say the word woke 17 times in a 2-minute span, which he has done in recent weeks. So, they want to keep him away from crowds and the public in general, because that's smart when you're running a presidential campaign, right? Let's keep him away from the people who need to vote for him because he's so gross that he turns them all off. They've also suggested that they may open him up for appearances on mainstream media. Even though he's been adversarial to ABC, NBC, CBS, MSNBC, and CNN, why not? Let's actually put him out there in front of real people instead of just these conservative media outlets. See how that plays. Here's the problem. Nothing that you have discussed changes the big problem with Ron DeSantis, and that is, of course, one, that he's wholly unlikable, but more importantly, he has no policy on anything. He has nothing to talk about. If he doesn't say woke every 30 seconds, I'm pretty sure his brain will explode. And you have done nothing to address that. You call it a reboot, the rest of the country looks at it as rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. You're putting lipstick on the pig. Whatever analogy you want to use here applies because they're not addressing the real problems. And the problems are that you've got a candidate that nobody seems to like. Donors are running away. Staffers are being fired. You can't reboot from that. This campaign is dead in the water. And you can reboot, revamp, retool all you want, but nothing is going to save it at this point if you're already having to reboot it after 2 pathetic months. Because that's all he's been in this race for, folks. Officially for 2 months. And he's already having this much trouble, which effectively means this campaign is probably over. Ring of Fire has fresh content 7 days a week, so if you want to be reminded about it, Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the little bell to be notified every time a new video goes up.